This is URC Reviewer Training Module 4, Neutral Reviews and Mitigating Bias. So we've already talked about the review criteria in general, recommendations and information about the procedures for reviewing proposals, along with what's allowable and what's unallowable. So whenever you are providing your comments and feedback, it is really important as a reviewer that you are focused on the elements that are contained in the proposal, tying your feedback to direct review criteria and the expectations of the URC and the allowability of the URC funding mechanism itself. So again, I mentioned in the last video about it's impossible to avoid all subjective opinions when you're providing feedback on applications, but it is really important that to the extent possible, you are using a neutral language when you're providing reviews. You want to avoid using superlatives like disappointingly and surprisingly and obviously. This is interjecting your own position without providing feedback that is going to help an applicant improve upon their proposal or address how they failed to or did a good job of addressing the review criteria itself. So try to avoid using subjective adjectives like careless, uninteresting, simple, and poor. These reflect personal feelings and opinions. And so again, if at all possible, avoid using language like that. And avoid universalizing things or speculating on what you what assumptions that you're making. If it's not directly related to a review element in particular, and if you could consider rephrasing it in a way that is actually more helpful to the applicant in improving their proposal or filling a gap that may make them more competitive in the future. So really consider if you can write out your initial response and then look at it and make sure that it is being as objective as possible based on the given situation. So the other thing that we want to talk about is implicit bias in the peer review process. So there are some articles linked here. I will attach a copy of the slide deck, the complete slide deck, whenever I send out these reviewer videos. So you'll have access to these active links. So I would encourage you to review these articles. But the peer review process, there's going to be some inherent bias in that review process because it is being done by people, and humans have their own experiences that they draw from, and none of us are immune to our biases. And so what is important then is to acknowledge those biases to the extent possible, and to keep them at the forefront of your mind when you are reviewing and really thinking critically about the comments and decisions that you are making and your own position and maybe preferences one way or the other in terms of certain components. So things such as language, grammar, field, gender or race or ethnicity or other background information that may sway your position as a reviewer. So acknowledgement of your biases that you have can help increase the likelihood of a more fair review process. So we recommend in the Office of Research that you take a self-test like the Harvard Implicit Association test before you conduct your reviews, just to sort of bring your own awareness to those biases that you may have. Even if you've done a test like this before in the past, we would recommend that you do another one just to sort of keep these things at top of mind so that you can be doing some self-reflection while you are reflecting on and commenting on other folks' proposals. I've also got some documents linked there that can help you understand the unconscious bias in the review process and how it could impact it and why it's important for you to really be aware of and acknowledging your biases before you go into the review process. And the other reason that this is important is because Appalachian is a small academic community. It's unlikely that you will be totally unfamiliar with all the applicants in your pool, but we still need you to review these proposals. And we expect that unless there is a familial connection or that you are directly involved in the project that they're proposing, that you're still going to be able to provide as fair of a review as possible from a neutral scholarly perspective, again, to the extent that it's possible. And so there is a high likelihood that you will be reviewing proposals from people that you know, either professionally or personally, or maybe both. And so it is important, again, that you are acknowledging your biases and trying to keep yourself as a reviewer in a position of neutrality, while understanding that you are a person and a human, and you have all these backgrounds, connections and experiences. So keeping those at top of mind to try to keep your position as neutral as possible. So again, here are some recommended readings and additional support materials. So the NSF has a really great brief reviewer training video called Tips for Reviewers, and that is linked here. It's a really quick, really quick reviewer training, and it's applicable to much more than just the NSF review process. It's just good advice in general for being a reviewer. The American Heart Association has a good peer reviewer training that focuses on unconscious bias. And so we have a copy of their slides linked here as well. And then there is a Nature article that I thought was really helpful about, and that goes back to that trying to use neutral language in reviewer comments to keep things as fair as possible and as objective as possible.